So good morning, good afternoon. My name is Raul. I am one of the release engineers for Uyuni, and welcome to this edition of Uyuni Community Hours. So this is the February edition, and today we have an agenda that covers the following topics. First one will be about what's next in the next upcoming release of Uyuni. Or rather discuss about important topics rather than saying what is really going to be included in there. And then we will be having 3 sessions from the engineers. First of them will be Simplified Proxy onboarding by Ricardo. Then Cedric will tell us about Kubernetes and setup, what is changing. And last but not least, Thomas will show us his work for the Hack Week some months ago about migrating to Maven. So without further ado, let's get started. And Uyuni 2025 OX what's next? We wanted to release an O2 this February release, but we didn't do so yet. And why? Maybe mainly because the base OS for Uyuni is OpenSUSE libmicro 5.5, which is out of support since December. And it didn't make a lot of sense to publish an update, a new release of Uyuni in a host OS that is not supported anymore. So we have kick off a discussion about the OS bump, or rather said the change of operating system. The discussion can be found in the first of the links in a GitHub discussion. And we offered, after conversation with the community, to choose between OpenSUSE Tumbleweed and OpenSUSE MicroOS. That is, let's say, the containers-based version of Tumbleweed. It's a little bit similar to what libmicro is, but in the Tumbleweed world. So the poll is open for already some time, and we gave time to vote within it until tomorrow, end of business day. And actually, I checked how the poll was going, and the result was pretty tight. So in case this is something that especially interests to any of you, please go ahead and vote, and because otherwise your opinion won't be taken into account. And well, also remember that this is a community product, so this is not about supporting or not supporting. It is rather that we are testing and validating one host OS. And actually, in the link that you can see for the discussion, we could find out, and I was happy to see that some people were running the containers on, I don't remember if it was Ubuntu or Debian. So such things work, apparently. And yeah, we are not against that. We can even encourage that, but we can only test and validate in one OS. But we will be always happy to hear that you're running Uyuni in something different. And of course, if you have any issue running Uyuni in a different container host, please let us know, report those, and we will do our best to look into them as much as a community product can be supported. So with that being said, we want to make the next release. So Cedric?
I also want to highlight that if you are running the Uni on something that is not what we're testing and what we're documenting, please submit some documentation pull requests so that it can benefit others.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you had to hack around, tell us that we can at least see if we can do something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very good point, Cedric. Thanks for that. So with that being said, we thought that it didn't make sense to make a release with libmicro 5.5 as host OS. So we are postponing it a little bit until we have an operating system that is chosen by the community in the poll. And once that we know the operating system, we have to provide a migration, because otherwise, whoever is running on lib micro 5.5 or another OS and wants to migrate, yeah, it's a bit on his own. So we want to test a migration, provide that migration, and document that. And those will be the most important points of the next release of Uyuni. In addition to that, we haven't seen any super important CVE so far that is rushing us to make a release. So yeah, we are just in some kind of a standby point, and I've been starting calling it 2025 03 release. So I think it will be in this upcoming month of March, but we will see. So is there anything you would like to discuss about Uyuni release, host OS, containers, anything? Otherwise, you can think about that, and we can come back to this at the end of the session. So, as there is nothing else, I think we can go with. No, I forgot something important. This came last minute, and Victor wanted to tell us something about the performance of Uyuni, more or less since we went into the containers product. So, Victor, I will let you speak by yourself.
Yeah, thank you. I will try to be quick. Last time I presented the Saline with some of the performance-related metrics, and before preparing during the preparing for the presentation, I found quite strange numbers from the processing out calls from the minions, and this actually leads to quite weird finding that we found that the processing of the out calls with the containerized version of Uyuni is 10 times slower than it was before when we were running on the host machine, not on the containerized version of Uyuni. But good thing that we already found the solution for it, and we are waiting for the approval from the maintenance team to include the fix with the M2 crypto package with the next release. Hope it will happen soon, but in case if someone is affected, most probably it could be affected the large-scale environments with more than hundreds machines. So feel free to reach us, and we will suggest at least temporary solution. And I think that's it from my side.
Okay. Little addition from my side. Maybe the people from the community don't understand this maintenance team. So this is a community product, but it's also the base for other enterprise products. And such fixes have to go through some processes and other departments to release things for Uyuni. We are quite independent, but for other packages and so on, like this one and to crypto, we have to go through the regular channels. So it might take some time, but I would say and hope that this is going to be in the next Uyuni release. So is there any question about this performance issue that Victor pointed out? Okay, doesn't look like. So now, yes, we can go already with the sessions by our engineers. So first one is by Ricardo, Simplified Proxy onboarding. So Ricardo, stage is yours.
So let me just set some things here. Share my screen, because an engineer totally knows how to do these sort of things. And will not screw up, not even once. Let me know if you can see my screen.
Yeah, I can see.
Yeah. Okay. So my name is Ricardo Mestre. I'm from the Hexagon squad, and I'll be presenting here something that we've been working on to simplify the proxy onboarding process. So my shortcuts are not working. Okay, there. So currently, setting up a uyuni-proxy from scratch involves onboarding the minion, configuring the software channels, generating the configuration file, then transferring that configuration file to the minion, installing Podman and the manager proxy into the minion, and then executing the manager proxy install command. And while all of this process isn't overly complex, it requires following each step manually, switching between different environments like the web UI, execute some basic operations, typically over a terminal, SSHing into the minion, and then dealing with the manager proxy tool while ensuring all the parameters are correct. In this new flow we're introducing, it aims to simplify the process by minimizing manual interventions, and as a result, it makes all the process less error prone. So in this first iteration, we focus on streamlining the less steps, which are marked on the screen as orange. So let me show you more or less what you can expect from it. Having as a starting point an already onboarded minion with the channels already set up, etc. As usual, you'll see it on the system list. Then when you get into the minion details, if this minion can be converted to a proxy, a new button will be available on the top right corner. And when you press it, we'll basically add a proxy as a dead-on system type, and automatically will redirect you to the proxy configuration form, which can also be accessible on the configuration entry that becomes available under the rearranged proxy tab. And more about these menu updates later on. But for now, the new configuration form should be quite familiar for you if you work with the previous tools that we have, because it's based pretty much on the existing form to generate the proxy configuration tarball. It is divided into three sections. The first one, you set the basic parameters like the parent, the SSH port, the squid cache size, and the email, which, like I mentioned, it's pretty much the same as the form this is based on. Then the certificate section, which is also really similar to the original form. And for now, we are only allowing to provide existing certificates. But finally, a new section where you can choose the source images for the containers. You can either use RPMs or registries. And in this case, you can use a common registry URL and version, or using the advanced mode, you can specify those individually for each container. Finally, you can hit the apply button and wait for the magic to happen until the success message pops up. And unless your minion is a transactional minion, unless your minion is running on a transactional system, your proxy should already be running. Otherwise, you'll have to just reboot it. And that's pretty much it when it comes into applying these settings into a server. So regarding the menu changes, currently we have 2 tab entries that contain proxy-related information. And since we're adding yet another another proxy-related tab, we felt this was enough justification to give proxy its own dedicated tab. So this means we had to restructure a bit. We selected the relevant tabs, renamed the existing proxy tab to clients, as this name better reflects the information that it contains, within the proxy scope, and then just fit them under proxy tab for next to the configuration that we just mentioned earlier. So to summarize, this flow allows you to set the proxy just by filling one form. It requires less technical knowledge and ends up saving time, and it's also less error prone. So, but we also did add a few more things. Once a proxy configuration is successfully applied, we can later reuse this configuration, adjust wherever we need, and just reapply it. This also means that upgrading a proxy is also easier. And finally, just for the SCC registries, we also added automatic authentication. And that's about it, guys. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Ricardo. Any question about this simplified proxy onboarding new approach? Ricardo, is the code already merged or?
No, not yet. It's there's a pull request ongoing, and there are a few things that can change. It's mostly front-end behaviors that we are trying to address, nothing that will block this whole the flow in the main mechanisms that we want to apply here.
Okay, so community users can expect it soon, but it is not there yet, and maybe not even there for this release if there is one in March. Don wanted to say something. Don.
Yeah, so this mechanism, does it work only on Podman, or can you deploy it to Kubernetes?
The way that we are applying this right now is using Podman only.
Yeah, the global thinking here is that we expect to have the proxy host to be registered, and if you go this way, then it will be a Podman setup.
Okay, thanks.
Ricardo wanted to say something.
Yeah, just one note. As far as I know, and I didn't say anything in contrary of this, Uni is focusing on managing virtual machines, bare metal machines, and so on, and is not looking at a way to manage applications in Kubernetes. For that, there are other applications that can do it much better than SUSE Manager. So if someone wants to deploy a Uni-containerized proxy in Kubernetes, it should use proper tools for that are not on the Uni scope, at least at the moment, and I don't foresee that happening in the near future.
Okay, thanks a lot for the clarification. Is there any other question for Ricardo? Otherwise,
No.
I think, sorry?
No, all good from my side.
Okay, so otherwise, I think we can go to the next presentation. Let me see my screen. And it's going to be Cedric's Kubernetes and setup. What is changing? So Cedric, the stage is yours.
Okay, so I suppose you see my slides, right?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so let's go ahead on Kubernetes and the setup. It is changing a lot. It has changed a little bit already, but there's more to come. And I want to give you another view of what has changed, why it's important, and why we need them, these for Kubernetes. I apologize for those going to SUSECon. Some of this content I will reuse as well there. Not in exactly the same form, but you'll see some of it. So here, let's start with the history of changes. So around November, December, I think it was for Hack Week, I changed the setup completely, even for Podman and for Kubernetes. That time, in the latest releases that we have, we were running the big container, and then we were executing inside it to run the setup. It was okay-ish, but the problem is that you don't have logs easily because they're just stored in a file. And for Kubernetes case, it's just not possible. I mean, we cannot just exec in containers there just during the installation. At that time, my goal was to create an operator. And operators are just similar to applying the YAML files to your Kubernetes cluster. And you cannot craft a YAML file for Kubernetes that says execute in this container and do this. No. So now the setup and the same for upgrade and migration is just a different set of containers that are running independently, and on Kubernetes there will be jobs. And in Podman, they're just containers, and you get the logs in NGR ADM's output. In the last few weeks, so this one is very recent, I extracted the SSL certificate generation. So you know, obviously, that when you set up a Uni from scratch and you don't provide your own SSL certificates, we generate some self-signed CA and certificates. So these are now generated in their own container. So before setup, we are starting a container that just generates the SSL certificates and CA with the same tooling that we were using before. So it's still using the giant image, container image, but well, for now we'll have to live with it. And these certificates are then reused in the setup and the real container. Why doing this? The reason of this one is because we're currently splitting the database into its own separate container. And we are using SSL for the report database because this one is exposed to the public. And before, it was using the same SSL certificate that the one that is used for Apache. And that's not possible, obviously, here in the case of the splitting containers, because the setup would run after the database is started, right? So we need to create the certificates before. So we are generating certificate for Apache and one for the database, and they're mounted in the proper containers. So this is the history of changes. Of course, database split is not merged. SSL certificate generation in their own container is. How the setup looks like now. So as I said, on Podman only, it doesn't make sense at all on Kubernetes because SSL certificates are handled by outside tool. I only used Cert Manager. I think it's the de facto standard out there, but maybe some other tools can be doing this. You can even pass your own manual certificates there. So for Podman only, first we're spawning a container generating certificates. Then, and this is still work in progress, not committed, not pushed, the database container starts, and we create all the super user things. So database, user, and we have a custom type that we have to create with super user rights. And once that is done, we don't need the super user rights anymore. The setup of the container, so the thing that was in exec before is just one container that runs the setup and exits. This forced me to rewrite the setup scripts to not depend on systemd to be running. So that means that here the setup script is just the PID one, and we don't need the systemd. And so this container stops once the setup is done. It's by the way, it's also the container that will create the first user. And if you have an upgrade or a migration, then you will be you may have the upgrade containers that run to upgrade the database, finalize, and so on, just like before. But then now they're just containers. And finally, we run the production container. So Kubernetes, what is the problem? So when I started working on Kubernetes and getting uyuni running there, the main concern was to run it and make sure that it was running, it was possible. And then you can imagine I'm a developer. I'm not an admin, not even less of a Kubernetes admin, even though I have certification. I don't have experience. And the problem is that I realized over time that Kubernetes admin won't let us touch the cluster at all. So MGR ADM running on a cluster node to deploy uyuni is just not possible. MGR ADM is also deploying Nginx or Traefik configuration to expose the non-HTTP ports. And again, this is something that we cannot do ourselves. We may ask the cluster admins to do this. If they're kind enough, they will do it. But we have to find another solution to handle this one. So I also tried to have a look at the operator to see if that was an option once we start growing the number of containers that we have. Basically, technically, it's working. It's working. It's okay. I got the installation working fine, but I have two problems there. First, I need to select explicitly in the Go dependencies of uyuni tools and mgrADM which Kubernetes API version we want to depend on. And Kubernetes has a very fast release pace that would be way too fast for mgrADM. So we cannot rely on or expect one given Kubernetes API. Well, if we're going with YAML files, as long as we're not using latest and greatest features in these YAML files, it will be okay with the number of release. The other problem also of the operator is that we're also aggregating a big lot of permissions into one application. So that would be an application that would be able to create secrets, obviously view them, create deployments, and persistent volume claims, and many things. So it's probably a too big attack surface to risk this. I know that there are some mitigations for this, but it's probably not likely to be appreciated by Kubernetes admins. And the goal here of that I'm trying to reach, but when I have some time, is to get to a cluster admin free setup, at least to make it possible, and using Helm charts only. Maybe not just one, maybe a combination of Helm charts. For instance, you may not need to have the main Helm chart doing the migration as well. So you could have one migration Helm chart and one for the rest. So yeah, it's still work in progress. I have the feeling that it's doable, but haven't done it to the end to verify it and prove it. So this is basically what I'm targeting. So the blue parts are the things that would be generated by the Helm charts, and the red ones are the ones that we're expecting to be provided by the users. Typically, we're not expecting any. We're expecting SSL certificates. We're not touching anything. We're not doing them. The setup data, all the secrets for credentials, for database, for everything, admin user, would be provided by the user. The persistent volumes, they're either provided by the admins, or we can use a storage class that can generate them automatically. But we don't create them at all. And we would be creating some services that would be customizable. And you could have a load balancer, just like, for instance, MetalLB, that would plug on top of them to redirect to the ports. So that's basically the idea. In the Kubernetes world, the PostgreSQL database, I have no clue if we need to have it inside or outside the Kubernetes namespace. I have more feedback that it would make sense to have it outside. At least you could have it inside, but you need to do what to know what you're doing. It doesn't bring all the magic for free. You still need to have some knowledge of what PostgreSQL replications are and so on. It's not the you don't get all the magic for free. And one of the things I also want to test, but it should be doable. I have seen multiple things doing this. So, for instance, the server deployment could have a wait. So one of the init containers that you have on the deployment could have a wait on the setup job. So if the setup job is already finished, then we can go. If not, we'll just wait before continuing. So that's the mechanic we could use to have one Helm chart deploying all the jobs together and orchestrating them. And that's about it. Maybe you have questions.
Okay, any question for Cedric about Kubernetes? Check the chat. Done?
So what do you anticipate as like a timeline for being able to run Uyuni on Kubernetes?
The problem is that I'm mostly doing this on my free time, or when I have some free cycles, which means these days is not too much. So any help is more than welcome. And this is something I want to come back to again as soon as possible. But for now, the database split is making me busy, very busy.
So realistically, would you say like a year, 2 years? What are you thinking? Or longer?
Well, it depends on how much features you ask me to develop, right?
And
If
how
there's
much
only
help
this
you
one
get.
that will be going faster than if I have a ton of other things to do. Obviously, in a few months, we could have already something that is in a good shape. But getting the thing fine-tuned and so on may take a little bit more. And
how much help you get from the community too, right?
It also depends on that. And at least the one help I like to have is if you have experience on deployments on Kubernetes in real life, I'm interested to know what would be the things you'll be doing for deploying Uyuni in Kubernetes. Like I said, I only know the theory. I have never never practiced Kubernetes administration in real life. Never faced it. So any experience is more than welcome.
Okay, more questions? Okay, well, then I think we can finish this presentation. Thank you, Cedric. And I'm going with the next one that is going to be Thomas Hackwick project about migration to Maven. So Thomas, you can go ahead.
Hi everyone, let me quickly share my screen. So can you see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, so this presentation is about my Hackwick project, so the migration to Maven, or how I try to set up everything to migrate to Maven. So the first question that I try to address is why? Why are we doing this? Why we would like to move to Maven? And yeah, the first answer is to simplify the development setup process, because if you are wherever you try to hack our Java code, you know that the setup of the development environment goes something like this. You first clone our project, then you start by opening the IDE of your choice, and then some time passes while you're trying to figure out the wiki, the documentation, how to feed the dependency to the IDE, how to build, and yeah, at this point, in general, you need some help because it's currently pretty painful to perform the initial setup. This will be solved by moving to Maven because any IDE is able to pick up the Maven configuration out of the box, handle the dependency and everything correctly, and without any manual setup that we unfortunately require now, and is not very easy to do for someone coming from the community. Also, Maven can give us a standardized project structure. This is important for us because currently we have all our code is kind of mixed. In our code base, we are mixing test code with production code. We are mixing resources, stuff that is only required for test is mixed inside our packages. And this is also true for our dependency, because we are currently throwing everything inside the lib directory. We are putting there stuff that are needed to compile only and stuff that are needed at runtime. And also, for example, this all here jar is neither of those, because this is check style and is what we run to check if the code is correctly formatted and following our standards. So we have everything in a single directory, and this is pretty confusing for the IDE. When you try to pick up a class or a dependency, it's easy to pick up something that you shouldn't be picking up. Maven will give us a clear separation between the application, the test code, and what is required to actually build and check the source. This is something that could be achieved also with IVN, because with our current configuration, we just put everything in a single folder. We could improve that. And at this point, I was going to make a joke about how that would be like beating a dead horse, but actually Eevee and Ant are pretty well maintained, so I had to change the joke. Then Maven can also give us a proper modularization support, which will be extremely helpful since we are trying to split our huge code base into smaller parts, as the presentation Cedric is doing regarding modularization and containerization is showing, and this will help a lot in that process because Maven supports modules out of the box. And then we could use the same Maven definition to build both locally and in OBS, because currently we have a separate setup and a separate Ant script, one used locally to develop and the other used in OBS. And this leads sometimes to problems that are catch up later because they are only appearing when we build in OBS. But of course, everything comes with pros and cons. So why should we not use Maven? What are the pain points that Maven will bring us? So Maven, first of all, has a declarative approach. And we, in our code base, use a lot of custom script to help development and deployment. And all these scripts are difficult to replicate in the XML approach of Maven. We could build a plugin for those, but that's a painful process. Everything should be available in Maven Central, and that's another big point for us because we do not generally use those jars to build. We fetch them from OBS, but if we give up on this, it means that all the advantages that Maven can bring will be greatly reduced. And the other point that I would bring up is the elephant in the room, so Gradle, because Gradle is a more modern build tool that can bring us the same advantages of Maven, but it has a flexible declarative imperative approach where you can mix both things. It is fully extensible and programmable using Kotlin and Groovy, and this would allow us to do something like this mock that I made quickly, where we can declare directly the dependency from OBS, fetch them from OBS, and make them recognized by Gradle directly. And this is thanks to the programmability of Gradle, and I could write classes in Kotlin to ensure that we fetch the correct dependency from our build server, and this is not possible while using Maven. And also, it could also be potentially used for other languages, even though we had the support for Gradle for Python and TypeScript is not great these days, but yeah, that could be also a possibility. So yeah, let's switch the presentation title, Migrate to Gradle, right? No, this is because in order to achieve all this great stuff with Gradle, we need to be running on the latest version. And currently, we cannot build on OBS with that version because the version that we have in OBS is old. And as I said, it doesn't make sense to split again the way we build on the local machine from the way we build our project on OBS. And so we should stick to Maven, in my opinion, which could be a common solution for both. So what are we trying to achieve? What I was trying to achieve when I ran this project. So the first would be to open the project in our IDE and be able to compile immediately without any additional manual configuration. Everything should be fetched directly from the Maven configuration, and the dependency should be available and fetchable from Maven Central without requiring any manual intervention. We should also be able to run tests, check style, create the Java doc, the API documentation using the Maven plugins, so that this stuff can always be done from the IDE and from the local machine. And we should also be able to build both locally and on the build server with the same Maven script, Maven XML file. And this means we need to be able to use both the dependency that we fetch from Maven Central, but also the one that are available in OBS, because otherwise we won't be able to build on the build server, and we won't be able to replicate what the build server is building if we just fetch the jars from Maven Central. So how do we do this? How I plan to do this migration? So first, I started by defining the structure. We have currently in our project already some Maven projects that were recently introduced due to the latest development that we had. And I started by fitting our main Java project, Spacewalk Java, inside of it. And initially, I split it into 3 components. One for the core application, the main Java files, which is today compiled to the rhn.jar. Then the web app, which is already contained today in the web app folder. And then there is the doclet project, which is used to generate the API documentation, basically. One point that is missing here is Taskomatic, and which should live in its own module, but I decided not to split that initially because currently the Taskomatic core, the Taskomatic code is quite entangled with the rest of the application. So that would be a separate big project. So the first step to actually do is to move the sources, because we need to enforce the Maven source structure. And as I said, initially, I decided to not do any package refactoring. I had to do some minor tweaking of some classes because they were placed in the wrong packages. As a result, test will be separate in the test folder for Maven, but they will still live in the test package like they are today. I wrote a couple of bash scripts in order to move the sources and make sure that we were moving them with Git commands, so that we keep the track of the history of the moving. And I made a specific one to move the branding project and the Spacewalk Java project. And to simplify the backwards compatibility with the OBS build, the package directory is still the same, so everything still lives in Java. Ideally, we should migrate everything that we have that is written in Java into the Java directory and split that directory into multiple subdirectory for each package, but that's not the current plan. Then I updated the existing Ant script in order to maintain backward compatibility. So both the manager build and the build XML have been updated to reflect this directory change. And it is possible to build with Ant on both sides, so both locally and on OBS. And then it came the time to start handling the dependency. And I was able at this point to build with what was already downloaded locally by OBS to Maven and Divi. And this dependency, I have the problem that they are using a fake group ID, a common group ID, and a fake version. This is because of how we retrieve them, but this is problematic because without the correct group ID and version, we are not able to retrieve them on OBS. So we need to address this. And what I did was change OBS to Maven in order to parse the POM file contained in the package when it's fetched from OBS. So instead of using the same group ID, it was fetching the group ID from the POM, and it was getting the correct metadata. And in this way, when building on OBS, we are able to identify the package because the group ID, the artifact ID, and the version matches the one that is published by the package. So as you can see here, there's the option that I added in order to be able to do this, to OBS to Maven. And then I also added another allowed artifact in order to simplify the testing, but that's not relevant in this case. At this point, I thought I would simply be able to just fetch the dependency from Maven Central and be good to go. But yeah, no, that was not so easy, because we need to talk about the dependency that we currently have in our project. We have multiple inconsistency on how we declare our dependency and how they are published in OBS. We are using multiple dependencies that are outdated and not used outside of our project and are difficult to find in Maven Central. And some of them are also completely absent from Maven Central and other repository. So this is a big problem when going to Maven. First of all, we have packages that are missing the Maven definition. So there are lots of packages that we build in OBS that don't have the Maven metadata. Or these packages are easy to fix because it's just a matter of adding those metadata, because these are present in Maven Central and can be retrieved, but they cannot be retrieved, they cannot be matched in OBS when building in OBS. Then we have artifacts that don't exist in Maven Central. So for example, here I listed some of them, like Simple XML is a project that is last released in 2013. And the source only lives in SourceForge. We build them in OBS, so we have a package for that. But there is no Maven artifact in Maven Central for that, so it's not possible to retrieve it from Maven Central. The same is true for Simple Core. For the XML RPC framework that we use for our API, for site mesh. And one other funny thing that we have is this strat test, which is a library that we use to be able to test our legacy front-end code. And we have the project, but we fetch this jar directly from GitHub, from the repository. And so there is no way we can retrieve this with Maven currently. We need to either build it separately and publish to Maven, or integrate it into the main Uyuni source code base. And then we have also artifacts that we should not be using, like, for example, core, because it's an internal artifact that should be not used directly. Everything should depend on net ASF hcache and not on hcache core, which is an internal artifact. And we need a manual override when configuring it in Maven in order to be able to use what we are currently using and building in OBS. The same holds true for statistic, which is used by core, and it is an internal dependency that was never meant to live outside of the core jar. In fact, in the official distribution of core, this code is shaded inside the main jar of hcache. We separated it on OBS and we build a separate package, but in this way we cannot build it and retrieve it from Maven because it doesn't exist. There is only a different version which was made public later, but it's not the same as we have and we are using. And then we have also versions that do not exist. So for example, two examples are JAXB API. We are using a version 2.4.0, which only exists because we build it. There are only beta on Maven Central for 2.4, and then the artifact was moved to Jakarta with a different versioning. So the 2.4.0 does not exist. And the same is true for Woodstock Core ASL, which is another one of our dependency. We build it as version 4.2 in OBS, but this source code was taken for the GitHub master branch and was never released as 4.4.2. Only a 4.4.1 exists in a distributed form that can be retrieved either from Maven or from the repository. Then we have some problematic dependency, like, for example, these are available in Maven and we build it in the correct way, but they are problematic in multiple ways. Because, for example, Spark Core is one important dependency for us because we build our controller logic for the REST API and the internal API that we use for the front end. But this is currently kind of dead. The last change was from 5 years ago, and the project seems totally abandoned. Luckily, it seems that there is an active fork that we could evaluate to switch to. And then there are some dependency that are part of the Maven definition, but we do not provide them at runtime. So I don't think that they matter because we are not using them in that way, but they are there, and we are not building nor providing them in any way. And we are providing instead two versions of the same JAX-B runtime, because we are shipping both JAX-B runtime and JAX-B imp, which are the same code compiled in different version in different time, but they are the same code in the end, and we have both on the class point. So where do we go from now? Where do we are and where do we go from now? So the current status is that with on my branch, on my GitHub branch, I can build, test, run check style with Maven if the correct dependency are provided. We can fetch all the dependency with the modified OBS to Maven version that I have, apart from the struct that I mentioned, because that only currently possible just to fetch it. But with the modified OBS to Maven, I can fetch all the dependencies, so I can build the project. With if I try to instead rely on Maven Central, all the problems that I showed you in the previous slide arise, and so we cannot build fetching the dependency from Maven Central, which is the ideal thing, because it would allow a member of the community or someone who just want to hack the project to just take the project, open it, and compile. As we know, the dependencies that we fetch from Maven Central are not exactly the same that we provide on runtime, because the versions that are built on OBS might slightly different, but it's good enough to get someone started, to get a person who want to contribute to start. So the question is open now, and is where do we want to go from here? We want to keep moving in this direction and extend this quick demo that I have and this quick presentation that I did, and try to extend this and make sure that we address all the problems that are stopping us from using Maven Central repository and to fully be compliant with Maven? Or do we think that this is too much work and we should try to find a different solution to address the same problem? And with this, my presentation ends. So I'm not sure if there are any questions from the members of the meeting.
Okay, thank you, Thomas. So let's see if there is anyone, any developer contributing to Uni that might be interested in this, or any of our developers that wants to add anything. Any question for Thomas? Any comment?
Well, I just wanted to say that this trust test thing is probably something we should have in our repo. It has been developed and at least forked by one of the previous guys from the Uni team, and well, it's only in our repos, only for our unit tests, and that's it. That would be one less problem.
Yeah, indeed.
Okay, anything else? Either about this presentation or about any other topic discussed during the community hours? Otherwise, I will just send yet another reminder to vote in the poll to choose the host OS for Uni until the end of business day tomorrow. Let me check the chat if there is any comment. Nothing that I can see. So if there is nothing else, I think we can wrap up. Yeah, Julio, thanks for sharing the link. Actually, it is in the slides as well. Is the issue, well, not issue, but this discussion 9804. So I don't think then there is anything else to discuss. So thanks a lot. I'm going to stop the recording, and hopefully we can see each other next month with more topics. So I will stop the recording. Have a nice day. Bye bye.